You know the drill. Cheap goals conceded, no shots on target. It's the same old routine each week. And Saturday was no exception at Villa Park. 1-0 to Villa, the final score. This week, Steve, it was the turn of Taylor Harwood-Bellis to make the mistake that cost us the game. It's getting harder to watch, isn't it?
It's just utterly frustrating, and in many ways, it's kind of now a little bit mind-numbing. While everyone kind of said at the start of the season, "Oh, we're making the same mistakes," and it's all very predictable. I actually thought we were making a variety of different mistakes at the start of the season, whereas now we are genuinely making the same mistake over and over again. And it is very much. Get Bill Murray on the pod for a bit of Groundhog Day. I think it's it's infuriating because Villa were there for the taking. Once again, we start again quite well. We look half decent. We're on the front foot. We create some half chances. Don't quite get the rub of the green. Opposition defends quite well, as they're perfectly entitled to do. And then they go down the other end and we do something really bloody stupid. And it was, I think, kind of like watching back on the highlights, you can hear even Joe Tessam's even kind of suggesting that the first mistake where Lumley has bafflingly tried to pass the ball 2 yards in his own 6-yard box, that kind of precedes what happens then 2 minutes later, where the long ball comes and Harwood-Bellis just doesn't get the ball under control in the right place. In that situation, while the sort of calm and collected ball playing centre half, you want to get the ball under and then lay a pass off. But when the wind is howling in the way that it was, and it was absolutely ridiculous, the weather conditions up and down the country all day yesterday, every game was like this. Ball goes in the air and it's a complete lottery as to where it's going to fall, how fast, whether it's going to pick up any pace, whether it's going to just come straight back down from where it came. And I think in those situations, you've just got to be a little bit more pragmatic, and that's what we've continued to not do. Like last season, there were pragmatic changes that we made after that sort of September horror run, where we cut out the vast majority of those really basic mistakes. I mean, obviously you're playing against championship sides, so the level and quality is very different, but we've not had that period. Well, we had a little brief period of a handful of games where we were, say, making one mistake per game, and quite often we weren't actually being punished for them. And you're thinking, okay, well, maybe we might have got the hang of this. But you come up against a side like Villa, who have been, I mean, for the first time really under Unai Emery, getting a little bit of criticism for lack of form, lack of kind of tactical nous on their part in terms of the way they've been playing the high defensive line for a while. And you think, well, there's an opportunity to get at them, and we kind of did it up until the point at which we made that first mistake, and all of a sudden we're like just sort of heads gone for 5 or 10 minutes. So yeah, it's a mental thing, and it then comes back to are the players we're signing of the right level from a quality perspective. Some fit in, some you can make do with every now and again, but some you wouldn't want anywhere near a Premier League starting 11, quite frankly. But the mental side of things is the biggest issue, and I mean, to be honest, Saints have had that for years. Even when we were genuinely good, that one sort of Ronald Koeman spell,
that one season.
I mean that was the time where you had a group of players who you knew had that mentality of knowing exactly when to switch on, when you could get away with relaxing in certain circumstances, and still get through and get the job done at the end of the day. And we haven't had that either side of that, quite frankly. And there is a mental issue, but a lot of the sort of the mentality is learned over a long period of time. It's not something you can just pick up and run with. And a new manager coming in doesn't automatically instill a completely different mentality into people. That's just not the way that psychology and this sort of stuff works. But I mean, it's clear to see that Russell Martin's now getting very agitated. I mean, I've not listened back. I've not been able to hear any of the sort of the press conference in terms of whether the line of questioning was antagonistic. I mean, Alfie, you'll be able to answer that in a bit. But he's biting at people and now throwing out sort of sarcastic comments about the fans cheering that we went long. I mean, his comments immediately after that were absolutely spot on in terms of explaining why we don't go long, because we've got short attackers who, if you go long, the ball's just coming back at you anyway. So you might as well try and keep the ball the way that you feel that you have the best chance of doing so, and pumping it up to Adam Armstrong against Ezri Konsa and Pau Torres clearly isn't going to work. But again, in the conditions, you've kind of got to pick your battles, and especially in the press. I know. Obviously, everyone's emotional in like 5-10 minutes after a game, but you've still got to kind of keep a lid on things and say what needs to be said as opposed to what you might want to say sometimes, because ultimately those words will have turned a number of people against him now.
Well, let's ask Alfie about those comments, because there are other things. There were some positives from the game that I'd like to get into. There were some negatives as well that we need to address. There were a couple of little bits. Nathan Wood, I thought, had a good game. Yeah. But we're all talking, Alfie, about. I don't think he was blaming the fans. It seems like it was taken slightly out of context to me, but without blaming them, he sort of did. And it wasn't the thanks for travelling all this way during a storm to watch the team. It was a bit of negativity and some words around that.
No, exactly. He wasn't blaming the fans. I think anybody who actually listens to it or reads the full quote can see that. He's not saying that the fans cheering is the reason we conceded the goal. But what he is doing is, he's making a sly dig about the fact that they've ironically cheered his team going long, and that for me is not acceptable, really. When you say the fans have travelled all that way in a storm, they were good on the day, by the way. They were behind the team throughout, rightly they're all going to be pissed off about it, if I'm being honest. So I think that was a really stupid thing for him to say, and I'd like to think he'll regret it. Who knows if he actually would. But what I would say, the line of questioning, he didn't then repeat that in our press conference. So he said that to Adam Blackmore on the radio. And often you get these sort of lines that come out in the radio, and then we get about 5 minutes later, we hear them as well. He didn't say that again. So maybe someone said to him, probably shouldn't say that, or he's thought it himself. But it wasn't an antagonistic line of questioning. But to be fair to Adam Blackmore, he did follow up and say, well, those fans would argue that having 0 shots on target away from home is unacceptable as well. And he agreed with that. He's right about that. But it is unacceptable. So I thought that was a disappointing comment from Russell. And at a time when he's just trying to sort of paper over cracks and bridge relationships, it was a really silly thing to say. But you mentioned a couple positives. I mean, not many, really. There aren't many positives. I'll leave Glen to talk about Nathan Wood, maybe. But, for 15 minutes, they were decent. They had a couple half chances. And in that first half, even after we went behind, there was a couple of times where they regained the ball in the final third, and they should have made something of it. I think Flynn Downs had one, and there's a couple others. And they just don't shoot. The quality is wrong. They turn, they pass it back, and you just think, what are they doing? So there's a real deficit there of confidence, of quality. And then that second half was dreadful. I mean, it was so boring. Villa weren't very good, by the way. They were fine, but they weren't very good. And yet they could have played all night and Saints would never have scored. So, that's mentality, as Steve said. That's quality, and I think that's confidence as well. And of course, there's tactical elements too.
Does he sound to you, Glenn, like someone who knows that the writing is on the wall? Because he was, I don't want to blame Taylor Harwood-Bellis, but he shouldn't be doing that. And then obviously the reference about the fans as well. Just seems like he's feeling the pressure.
I don't think he's the sort of guy, to be honest, to think that the writing's on the wall. Unless someone, it just seems to me to be very sort of like arrogant about the way he plays, and this is the way we play. And I don't think I think it would genuinely be a shock to him if they pulled the trigger.
I think, did he say this week he's not been sacked yet in his career? He made reference to that, saying, "Oh, I haven't been sacked yet. We've been playing this way for this many years, and we haven't been sacked yet." It's like, well, hang on a minute.
It's the first time for everything, mate. You know, I mean, I'm glad you went to the other guys first, because I was basically going to say we turned up, had possession, gave a goal away, had more possession, did nothing, lost. That was it. That was my match report.
Going to be a short blog this week.
Yeah, could well be. I basically can't take being a laughing stock. You know, the team is a laughing stock. The national media are now getting on the bandwagon, and we are a laughing stock, and that's my club, my city, and by extension me as a Southampton fan being a laughing stock. I mean, during the game you had Villa fans getting excited when we got a goal kick, because they knew that they were going to be having another shot within about within seconds, or there was a very good chance of them having another shot. Now, a goal kick is supposed to be the end of the attack. That's supposed to be, okay, you've had your shot, that's the end of your attack, we're now going to play. But they're cheering goal kick, they're cheering us getting a goal kick like we would cheer getting a corner or putting 3 passes together, in the attacking third, that sort of thing. So that's what I mean about we're becoming a laughing stock. Both Villa and Chelsea think we're a laughing stock because they both rested their mainline centre forward when they played us, because they know that they could probably just pick any forward and we'll give them a chance. And John Duran and the Chelsea lad both got goals against us from our mistakes. So, it's just grim at the moment. I thought his comments were stupid. I mean, after the Chelsea game and after most of the other games, he comes out with all this brave and proud crap. Brave were the people who travelled up there in that weather. 3,000 people travelled up there, and you should be proud of them. But he decides to have a dig. Now, yeah, I agree. It wasn't a dig of saying they caused the goal. Of course they didn't. But it's basically saying, arrogantly, the fans don't know what they're talking about. Now, we all know some fans know what they're talking about, some don't. I'm sure some have accused us of not knowing what we're talking about in our time, but it's not the sort of thing you say when you're under pressure, which is part of the reason I don't think he thinks he is under pressure. He just seems to be sort of like blissfully unaware of it, and we carry on. We make stupid mistakes, and it's the same thing. Apparently, we've given away 10 goals now. From mistakes in our half. I mean, we hear about this risk-reward thing, and he says, we do it because of what it creates at the other end. Well, we've scored 10, and I think we've conceded 10 from mistakes. So that risk-reward thing is not really happening, is it? But on the other side of the coin, we've got terrible players in the front half of the pitch. There was tactical stuff that I didn't get as well about the game. I mean, to start with, Dibbling seemed to be at the centre forward, and Archer was wide. And the midfield, we had Fernandes playing behind Downs. And then you wonder why Downs gets into a position that he doesn't really know what to do. When he gets into an attacking position, he's a defensive midfielder. Why are we playing him as like a number 8? And I know he presses more aggressively than Fernandes, but Fernandes is 100% more creative and more likely to score, I'd say. But there was just mad stuff going on, and it was just Alfie got the right word, boring. Yeah. The second half was so boring. It was just a case of whether Nathan Wood could stop Aston Villa scoring again. So he was the main positive. I mean, I'm not overstating this. I thought he was brilliant. Just everything he did. He actually did the right thing on the goal we conceded as well, because he held off the player to allow Harwood-Bellis to get to the ball, and then Taylor made a miss of it. But in the second half in particular, Wood he basically threw himself at sort of 2 1-on-1, one-on-one defending, and he managed to keep the ball out. He was excellent. I mean, we're going to get onto the Chelsea game, but we all know what we're going to talk about with the Chelsea game. We're not going to miss that idiot. And that shows to me that Nathan Wood should be certainly getting the minutes that idiot would have got. And he proved me wrong because I've never thought much of him. When I've seen him play in the Carabao Cup and in the pre-season friendlies, I thought he was a bit weak defensively, but he certainly stepped up to the mark, and it's a really good example of players who are not in the squad and not getting minutes. This is what you do. You get given your chance and you take it. I mean, we've got some right idiot players, as you know, who get given minutes all the time, never do anything. I mean, the Chuckle brothers that we bring on up front every game at the moment, we bring them on, and Sulemana and Brereton Diaz, and everyone says, "Oh well, they haven't had much time." But it's funny, they always have enough time to show me that they're crap, but they never have enough time to actually show something that might be decent, that might give you promise for the next game. So.
Yeah, but then on the other hand, Glenn, Sam Amo comes on. I'm not saying Sam Amo is a world beater or did anything special, but his first action is to beat someone and get a ball into the box, something that Ben Brett and Diaz and Kamaldeen haven't done all season.
No.
Sam Amo put in the best cross of the game, and that's where we are now. We're remembering the best cross of the game because we're
that should be our poll going forward.
best cross of the game. But no, I mean that was a positive, and that's one thing Russell Martin did get right. I'll give him that because he brought Sam Amo on before he brought on those other two idiots. Yeah. So that's a change in the pecking order, because in previous games he would have left Sam Amo off and he wouldn't have played. So that was good. But yeah, so he was a minor positive. Nathan Wood was a major positive, and and that was it. But I mean, when I saw the starting lineup, you look at our team, and I know Nathan Wood was a surprise, but at the start of the game, I'm looking at it thinking Bree, Manning, Lumley, that's Adam Armstrong. God, he was awful. That's just poor. It's just not Premier League standard there, and so I wasn't surprised the game panned out as it did, and it was exactly the same as Ralph Hasenhutl's game up there, where we let in a first half goal and then did absolutely nothing and stunk the place out basically. So yeah, let's talk about the Chelsea game. That was even better.
You mentioned the embarrassment thing. I hadn't actually checked Derby County and how many points they had at this stage of the season. And
more than we've got.
I was holding off doing that, and then one of us did it today and put it on social media, and it was pretty depressing. They were further ahead than we were, weren't they? Alfie, was that right? They had more points at the stage of the season.
Yeah, they had more points than Southampton do now by about a month ago, to be fair. But they were on 6 points at this stage of the season. We should say they didn't win a game for the rest of the year. I do think that Saints may win a game at some point this season. I do think that'll happen again. So I'm not really worried about it. But Glenn mentioned there being the laughing stock of the nation, and Derby County will never live that down. That is the ultimate humiliation. I know you've had the 9-0s, but if Southampton were God forbid, to break that record as well, it would just be an utter disgrace, and you would never forgive the people. So they just cannot let that happen. But I don't think that'll happen. I really don't.
The other side of the coin, Steve, I guess, they're a Champions League side. Do we expect to get much out of it? You look at the games in isolation. We go to Villa. We're never going to get too much out of that. And actually, we played all right for 15 minutes, and then it was a mistake that gave it away. So is it about managing our expectations for those kind of games?
I mean, partially. But then, you also look at, obviously we're crap at predictions, as we all know, but it was only Alex that predicted the Villa win out of all of us. And he admittedly knows that he will sort of happily admit he knows nothing about football. And here we are all chatting away, and we all stupidly went for us to get some sort of result.
It was hope more than anything, wasn't it?
Yeah, but thing is these days, you look at it just sort of in isolation of one team sort of analysing the squads up against each other. And Villa's team cost the best part of £500 million to put together. Ours very much didn't. And our team, we had 8 players unavailable, I think, still. So so it's a depleted side, plus also being significantly weaker in terms of the amount of investment that's gone in on it. Ultimately, a team that's beaten Bayern Munich this season should by rights be also beating Southampton. Same score, same goal scorer, incidentally. But I think most people going in wouldn't have I don't think people expect us to win these games. But I think certainly in the probably first 10 games, I guess, you go into these games thinking, well, you never know. Whereas I think, weirdly, Wednesday was probably the game that has kind of put us into that mindset of now people are now going into games expecting us to get turned over quite significantly, because we hadn't been up until that point. We'd generally been in most games. And then obviously Chelsea, we shot ourselves in the foot multiple times. And as a result, all of a sudden that confidence has drained. But I personally, I'd kind of take that Wednesday night horror show out of the way and kind of deal with everything else. I think this one we competed for spells, but as I said at the top of the show, we're doing the same things. We are competing in games and then not giving ourselves a chance, and that will, I mean, more often than not, that games only end one way when that happens, as we're seeing.
We kind of didn't need to be here tonight. We could have just played out last week's podcast, because it's the same kind of things, isn't it? At the moment, you talk about Groundhog Day, the team making.
Well, last week we played well.
No, true.
Yeah, that's all right. There's an amalgamation in there somewhere. Is there anything else on Villa before we move on? Because we need to talk about Chelsea.
Well, I mean, I think just like obviously the response has been really big to the Villa result, and I think that I've seen more fans who now think they want change than at any point since the Nathan Jones and Ruben Sellers incidents. And I think that it's a tough one for the board ultimately, because I've been through the reasons a million times why they're reluctant to change manager again. But fans are the lifeblood of the club, and ultimately, if they don't want the football that you're playing, then that's a big problem for the manager. And clubs do serve their fans; they do have to answer their fans, so they've got a big dilemma on their hands. What I will say is, obviously, we didn't get any news today. The club are keeping their cards close to the chest, obviously, on this. But I think it's been fairly quiet from what I've asked a couple of people. They told me, but obviously we could still get news in the next day or two. But if we don't, then you have to assume that he'll still be in charge for Spurs. And I just wonder what it's going to take. What it's going to take to make them think that all those reasons why they don't want to get rid of him, which are still valid. How toxic can it get before they go, all right, we'll have to do it. So it's a tough one for him now. I think that.
I mean, Chelsea game. I didn't hear anyone. There was nothing. I don't think there was anything in the ground. People chanting against him or anything like that. So we got stuff 5-1. I think
just a few boos at the end, wasn't it?
Yeah, most people's anger was directed at Captain Idiot, but it just seemed to. I mean, we're quite a docile bunch as a rule, I think, compared to a lot of clubs. But one of which we'll be talking about later on. But
it is the atmosphere, because Phil got in touch and he says, I think we really need to consider what leaving him in post would do to the supporters' mood and the attendances. You can have all the 10-year plans in the world and you can keep him in post too. You can even tell people that you're happy to do so. But if the results keep on as they are, it's going to be a very toxic atmosphere among the 15,000 who will still attend. And I think that's at the moment, it's on the brink, isn't it? It's going to go either way. And we'll obviously get onto the Spurs game in just a moment.